New York City is severely underchurched. Staten Island has been nicknamed the Forgotten Borough, and it really has been forgotten among church planners and pastors. There's a great need here. Even preachers say it's the deathbed for evangelism, and not a lot of works have been started on Staten Island, and the few of them that have been started have even failed. You know, Staten Island has only a few gospel preaching churches. It has a tremendous need. If you think of New York City being 8.4 million people within all the boroughs, and then Staten Island with 500,000, there's a need to put a church in every neighborhood across New York City, especially every neighborhood in Staten Island. And sadly, Staten Island has historically always had the least amount of gospel preaching churches. There's a tremendous need here. As you walk around the island and you walk around New York City, you see people's faces in despair. You see utter hopelessness across their face. You see even among their families how they raise their children is just outside of God and His goodness. Now, of course, there is momentary happiness. There's a lot of money to be made here in a city like this, and there's a big Wall Street pull to young urbanites that want to make it big in the big city. But that's only temporary happiness. Money can't buy happiness. Money can't buy salvation. Only Jesus can save. God has led us here. We came over to Staten Island in those early days and did a survey trip, and we spoke to some fishermen, and God kind of led us as we were just talking to some average Staten Islanders. He led us to plant a church in Staten Island.
The Lord really knit our hearts to Staten Island as a specific place that God wanted us to minister to those people. There's been so many people that we've come in contact with that we were able to give them their first Bible. There's people that we've come in contact with that we were able to share with them the gospel for the very first time. And a lot of the people that are in our church now are brand new believers that had never gone to church or very rarely went to church growing up.
And we've seen the gospel transform lives, and we're privileged to be a part of His great work here in the island. But we've also, along that way, started reaching people. We didn't know a soul when we moved here. We just kind of started speaking to people once we moved in here just 5 years ago, and we saw people get saved. We began discipling them, and we just saw new believers starting to grow. And after a period of time, we thought, it's time to have services in our apartment. I wasn't trying to pay a huge amount of rent, but I wanted to just have services in our apartment to save some money before we had our first building. And we had a core group of believers, and then it was time to trust God for a building. God gave us a small storefront to start out with. It sat about 30 chairs. It was quite small. It was no wider than some average pews in a church. But after a period of time, we began to grow in that small location. We would hit 40 people in a service, and we would have people standing and also standing outside the door. And after a while, we then began to trust God for even a bigger space. We're in the bigger place that God has given us. We can seat upwards to 100 people, and God is really blessed. And God has even provided things by other churches and other people and Christians.
And there's so many who gave that it would be hard to give credit to everybody, but so many people helped us get our more chairs. People helped us get our awning. We had somebody help us build a welcome desk, and people donated couches for our foyer. And it's amazing to see how the Lord's people came together to help us move into this new building.
We've seen God begin to restore marriages, and we've seen people saved. We've seen people saved out of Islam and other false religions and other belief systems that were without God and without Christ. And we've seen the gospel transform marriages and teenagers and adults and single people and all kinds of people, all walks of life, all nationalities. We've seen the gospel transform the soul. And it's been amazing to see God do this in our church.
Thank you so much for your support through all these years. Thank you so much for all that it gave to us to get into this building. Thank you for those that have helped us along the way all these years to keep our church up and running. The Lord is growing it, and we've had lots of visitors since we've moved into this new building and new space, and we are so excited to see what the Lord is going to do.
He's helped us as His vessels to plant His local New Testament church. We praise God for the opportunity to be servants of the Most High God.